Welcome to Kat's Candid Conversations. Kat McKeno is an award-winning journalist who has interviewed compelling people and organizations from around the world who make a difference.
Our guest, Michael Zimmerman, is a retired Navy commander. He has been decorated with several awards, including the Defense Meritorious Service Medal 3 times. He is currently a data scientist contractor for the U.S. Army and president of Maztech Consulting. He lives in Lititz with his wife and 3 children. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Kat. Pleasure to be here.
Good. We'll get right into it. President Trump said we're not going to have boots on the ground. At least he doesn't want to, but he opened the possibility. So we're wondering, if you're sending those troops to the region, does that mean we're going to have boots on the ground in Iran? Are we going to go to the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, what are we to think about?
Okay, so first off, there's the current conditions of the combat. Our youth, our sons and daughters, like I keep saying, and our grandkids and our nieces and nephews are operating at an operational tempo which is second to none. They're dead tired. We're talking about constant 14-hour to 18-hour days, lack of sleep, constant aircraft carrier launches, constant air operations, constant refueling, constant.
On the boats as well, on the aircraft carriers.
Exactly. And on the ground as well. And the Air Force, right? The crew chiefs are working 18, 20-hour days, exhausted. The pilots are getting their minimum sleep, and then they're getting back in the aircraft again. So for the people of the U.S. citizen needs to understand and be absolutely in awe of what our sons and daughters are doing right now. That's my real focus, is the men and women who are fighting this war right now, and the lack of casualties, the lack of accidents. There have been more aviation accidents in America, general aviation, over the past 15 days than there have been in a war of constant 24/7. The most dangerous place to work in the world is the deck of an aircraft carrier.
Why is that?
It's because of the nature of the environment. It's constant aircraft landing, constant aircraft taking off. There's a possibility of debris being on the flight deck. People are moving in and out. If you've ever seen I would recommend to the public, watch a video of the ballet which takes place on aircraft carrier deck. It's a ballet in the night, right? In the dark, 7-foot, 10-foot waves, carrier deck going up and down. Extremely dangerous environment with jets moving and taking off, jet blast there, and everything is going accordingly. It's amazing the amount of the focus and the work ethic and the performance of these men and women.
Well, you say our sons and daughters are going to war, but what is the goal of this war?
So I only have to go. Yeah, we can only defer to what the Secretary of War and the President say are their goals. So conceivably, in what's being released, the first goal was already met: the elimination of their nuclear capabilities, of Iran's nuclear capabilities. Right? Conceivably so, from what being reported by U.S. Central Command and by Secretary of War, Iran's nuclear capabilities are gone. That was the initial stated goal.
What do you mean they're gone? Where were they? I thought we obliterated them.
Well, that's what I mean. They're gone. They're obliterated. Well,
so we didn't go in there to take away more nuclear
we
threats.
did. Yes, we did. So I didn't know, about 7 months ago.
We went in and we obliterated their nuclear capacity.
Well, obviously we had to go back again, right? Otherwise, they would not have Iran would not have made public that we are 60% processed for uranium. Okay, meaning they said that, and so well, they have to report, right? So if a regime like Iran says we are 60% fulfilled in processing for uranium, what do you really think they are, right? They're going to minimize, right? Because their stated objectives were for processing of plutonium and uranium was not for energy. It was for a weapon. We had no choice.
60% processing,
right?
And we eliminated that.
And the experts regarding processing said even at 60%, that would have been, they were close to being 60%. At 60%, that would have allowed Iran, the regime, the current regime, to manufacture 50 atomic weapons the size of what the blast in Hiroshima.
And we recently obliterated that?
Yes, we did. According to the reports we were being given, yes.
What reports?
What the Secretary of War said and what United States Central Command said and the President, yeah.
So they said, as a fact, we've eliminated 60%.
We've eliminated all of their nuclear capabilities.
Recently?
Yes, so the past 15 days.
Where were they located? And how did they...
I've no idea. I'd have to look that up. Some of that's classified, and frankly, I don't know exactly where, but around Tehran, probably. Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
have to
that
assume.
was in a report that we eliminated 60%.
Right.
And what's the second one, the second goal?
As stated by the president, it's to eliminate a lot of Iran's military order of battle, which means their ability to function as a coherent and well-performing military operations.
Which we already talked about.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
What is the third goal?
I think it's pretty much implied. The third goal is to open the Strait of Hormuz, right? Maintain a free waterway and free traffic, right? Free navigation through the Strait of Hormuz.
And today, the news came out that they're threatening each other.
Who's that?
They said exactly, I'll give you the quote, Trump saying today, Sunday, the country had 48 hours or it will target its power plants, and Iran's military said it will target our key infrastructure belonging to the U.S. and Israel in the region. So they're threatening each other. If you do this, we'll do that.
That's war, right? It's not exactly diplomatic negotiations.
What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts on the free navigation through the Strait of Hormuz is absolutely necessary for the world economy, right? It's also necessary for the Gulf states, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, in Kuwait, even Iraq, right? The Strait of Hormuz has always been the choke point for the flow of oil out of the Middle East. And Iran has owned that pretty much, has de facto owned the Strait of Hormuz for 45 years? The current threat exists in not their aircraft, some of their missile systems, which have been taken out. Their surface warfare, surface-to-surface missiles, meaning anti-surface warfare, anti-ship missiles have been taken out. They were very much embedded, and we use large penetrating bombs to take out those missile sites. To back up, the current existing threat is really the nature of modern warfare, which is drones, fast-moving drones, fast-moving air drones, fast-moving surface drones, even fast-moving subsurface drones. And the RGC Navy actually also has always tried to bully and cause havoc in the Strait of Hormuz with their fast-moving attack boats, very small attack boats, right? So why small? Because if you've been watching modern war movies, for instance, everything's about radar, right? Small and mobile, can't see it on radar too easily, right? Drone swarms, can't really see them on radar too easily, and if you do, now you need to take out these, the size of the typical drone that you can put in your backyard. And one of the biggest threats that has really concerned me personally is a small drone carrying this 5-pound little missile. Doesn't do much damage, right? Unless you fire it into a tanker full of oil. Right? The tankers are so vulnerable to attack that's why the companies and frankly even the crews on the bridges are not going through or being permitted to go through the Strait of Hormuz.
So how are we going to open it up?
So you asked about the MEF, the Marine Expeditionary Force headed that way. So as far as boots on the ground, the mission of a Marine Expeditionary Force is not to invade Iran. They have 2,200 perhaps Marines, combat Marines, right? That's not enough to invade Iran, right? Those are tactical missions. They also bring with them more Apache helicopters. They also bring with them drone capabilities. Marine Expeditionary Forces are extremely tactical and extremely resourceful. If freighters need to be boarded, if vessels need to be boarded, the Marines are right in there, right? If I'm not going to go into potential operational security issues that I would consider operational security, but the Marine Expeditionary Forces could invade an island, go in, strike, and get right back.
You like the Care Island.
Karg Island, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're right.
But once they get out, Iran can get right back in there.
Maybe. But to do what? To rebuild? Well, while they're rebuilding, guess what's going to happen to them? Here come the Apaches. Here come the A-10 Warthogs.
So opening up Hormuz, would you use drones or?
So to open up the Strait of Hormuz, we have got to mitigate the threat of the drones, mitigate the threat of the fast attack boats, and mitigate the threat of any subsurface threats, meaning if Iran's...
How would you do that as a strategist? How would you do that?
How you could... There's with what's we're currently available for anti-drone warfare.
Okay.
Right.
Anti-drone warfare.
And you saw some of that was revealed by, I think, a frigate or a cruiser. I'm not sure what size it was, but using lasers, right? Also keep in mind that 2,000 drones and missiles have been targeted Bahrain, and only about 93% of them were shot down. Using what technology? I don't know. It's not in the media, is it? So
No, it's
right,
not.
yeah,
But it's there.
it's there.
We know it's
2,000 attacks, 2,000 missiles and or drone attacks, drone swarms against Bahrain. Their southern neighbor, Iran's southern neighbor, right? 93% shot down.
It's a big percentage.
That's also a mark to the performance and the talent of the engineers who designed those systems.
93%.
93%.
Interesting. I don't know that we're being told that. We just see the pictures of.
Oh, I read it today.
hotels.
I read it today.
Oh, okay.
I read it in Al
Hotels
Jazeera.
burning. Ah, interesting.
Yep.
Because we just see the hotels burning, like it got through, but 93% didn't get through.
Yeah, drama and negativity works, right?
Yeah.
Drama and negativity works. Fires work. Explosions work. There are no embedded reporters anywhere with any American operations, are there?
Oh, there's no reporters there at all.
Because there's no ground troops. How can you embed? What are you going to do? You can't put them on the back of an F-35 now, can you?
Good point.
How would the United States or Israel, I'm not defending this, but let's just talk the process, right? How would the intelligence community know that the missile systems 7 months ago were eliminated and now they're 60%?
How would they know?
Exactly.
That it was obliterated?
The only way you're going to know that is three
But
ways.
they said it
Through
was
intelligence. It was obliterated. They said it was obliterated. Maybe they did not get all the intelligence finalized. Maybe they got new intelligence. It's constant flowing. So what happens is the only way that anybody will possibly know what Iran's capabilities are is, number one, we have an inside source leadership, right? If there's Israel or America or whatever country has a source inside Tehran, or satellites, right? But satellites can only see so much. The other way is just general gathering of intelligence. So as for the intelligence life cycle, perhaps we got it wrong. I can only make those assumptions. I can't defend what DNI just said, and I can't defend what the president said.
Why would she say that? That she can't say there's an imminent threat and that we obliterated.
So that goes back to
it gets confusing, and that's why the public gets confused. Like, what's really going on here?
Understood.
You said there's a report. I haven't seen the report. I haven't read anything. Have you, Danielle?
Is it
about
publicly available, the report?
the 60% that they just.
Oh, that was an Al
obliterated?
Jazeera. That's everything I'm reading in the paper.
Okay.
That 60%. They were near 60%, and if they were able to process 60%, that equates to an eye-opening 50 potential suitcase nukes or small bombs placed on inside of an ICBM. I have no idea. I'm not a nuclear guy, so I have no idea.
Right.
I have no idea.
Well, you mentioned Israeli intelligence. Hasn't Bibi Netanyahu been warning us for like 30 years that they're a week away from the bomb? it's always like a week away. I mean, I'm exaggerating and paraphrasing.
I don't know, but also this is also what your perspective is. So the perspective of I don't believe anything the administration says, or is the perspective I'm full on board of Iran regime change and therefore eliminating any potential threat to our children. And if the president says it and the IC says it and the intelligence community says it, then we have to have faith in what they said. Are we right to question them? Absolutely. We're Americans. That's called the First Amendment.
So Danielle also has a question about he resigned Joe Kent from his position. And Danielle has a question about him because he was working intelligence, right, Danielle?
He was a counterterrorism chief.
Exactly. So he resigned, and Danielle has a question.
Well, I mean, I'm just building off the same thing. Do you take his word? He also said there was no imminent threat, and I would think he'd be in a position to vouch for that. But
from the counterterrorism office, maybe not. I mean, he does not work in Langley. He's Homeland Security, counterterrorism, right? Yeah. I don't know the man, but my first question is, having worked in the Pentagon and stuff, that how does the defense counterterrorism chief know everything the CIA does, the DIA does, and the Pentagon does? So again, it's Washington, right? I'm sorry, I am kind of cynical over every president, whether a Democrat or Republican, has to take a defensive posture because they're always being attacked, right? There's always the opposition, and it should be, right? So maybe Mr. Kent was bitter. I don't know. Maybe he was telling the truth that he thought there was no imminent threat, and if he was under oath and he said there was no imminent threat that he knew of, well, then I'm sure he did. That's what he really believed, right?
Well, I mean, from the interview I watched of Mr. Kent, it sounds like he's a staunch supporter of the president even now, even though he resigned and kind of in protest of this war.
Well, he kind of alleged that Israel pushed.
Right, exactly. That's where I was going with that.
Pushed the U.S. into it. You know, the rhetoric that Israel pushed us into it.
So we're getting back to what I was talking about. Without you being able to know all the intelligence, I'm not hiding behind it, okay? There's a reason why intelligence, I personally think there's too much classification in intelligence work.
In what way?
Well, I think the public needs to have access to more information, but...
What kind of information do you think the public needs to know?
Well, let's take, for instance, there are probably thousands of men and women in America who have the same clearance as I do, which are, good, really high clearances.
You still have the clearance today?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but that said, sometimes previous administrations have been able to hide behind that, call things classified, right? I can give you specific examples, but I have to think about that, all right? But I've noticed a lot of times it's easy to hide behind that classification level, counterintelligence or counterterrorism, right? For instance, all the accusations that was made against Mr. Trump about being a Russian, right? Yeah. Russiagate, that was all done behind the curtain of counterintelligence, because that allows things to operate and things to happen without the purview of the American public or even Congress.
Can you give an example of when that happened? What exactly happened? So it's not
a real example, historical example.
Well, according to Joe Kent, they stopped the investigation into Charlie Kirk's death. You're saying that we should go ahead with investigations to find out what happened, correct?
That's up to the American citizen and the American voter. My opinions don't really matter over whether we should chase after that. I mean, I don't even have an opinion on that.
But you believe we should investigate?
If there's corruption, yes. Corruption, absolutely. Thomas Jefferson has a quote attributed to him. The common enemy of the people are politicians, the government, and the government and criminals. So let's use the Constitution to make sure that the politicians don't become the criminals. Let's make sure the government does not become the criminals. Make sense?
Makes sense.
That's exactly how I work.
And that's why we have the vote.
I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. If you're corrupt, yeah. Again, I swore an oath to the Constitution, and that's my almost somewhat Pollyanna's point of view, but I don't care. That's I am very anti-corruption.
It's not always easy to find the corruption or
No, it's not.
do something about it.
No, it's not. 1920s Chicago, right?
Right. All right,
Can I
I'm
circle
gonna.
back? Yeah, just to wrap up the Kent section.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
One of the things he said during his interview was that Israel and America have different objectives. Now, you mentioned regime change as one of the objectives. And he made it clear he's not anti-Israeli at all. He's worked with intelligence in Israel. And he said if he were in their shoes, he would feel the same way. But one of the things he said, regime change is in their best interest. It's not necessarily in ours because it could draw us in further into the war. Would you agree with that? Or
No.
Okay.
No, it is in the world's best interest to remove this regime.
How do you remove it without a prolonged war and not having boots on the ground?
Great question. So
'Cause everybody agrees it's
we're
a
going
bad
to
Yeah.
the big thing. Can I address that
Sure.
question first? Right.
Sure.
Okay. If this country, America, was facing the constant imminent threat of sirens, missiles, terrorism, so on and so forth, I guarantee you
Oh,
that we would not tolerate it.
Sure.
And we shouldn't, right? We would not tolerate it. Look what happened after 9/11. Within weeks, right? Within weeks where we're in action, right? Israel has to go through a 9/11 almost every month. Not necessarily in the casualty rate, but as far as the threat, right? So, of course, they have different goals and objectives than we do. It's called survival, right? We're nice and comfy here in this nice living room.
we're distracted.
Exactly. We don't have to worry about a bomb being on our kid's school bus tomorrow morning, do we? It's called survival, right? So of course, they're going to hope that America helps them remove the threat, and we always have, right, for their survival. During my speeches I've been giving lately, I always come out with one phrase, a reminder to the American people: we are a good people. We are the redeeming nation. Now, you're going to have to typically drag this democracy, this republic, in kicking and screaming into war and threatening and putting our sons and daughters' lives at stake. But we are the redeeming nation. We represent democracy, the last hope, like Mr. Reagan said, the last hope. And so we have an alternative objective than the Israelis do, or the French do, or the Spanish do, or the Germans do, right? And that is our own American objective. So, of course, we have different objectives than Israel. That's natural. Because everyone knows that every country spies on each other, even their friends, right? We have to.
So assuming regime change is in our best interest, how do we not guarantee, but what I'm trying to ask is that how do we ensure that something that even worse doesn't go into power in Iran? Like, what do we replace that regime with is my question, and how do we keep that sustainable?
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What could possibly be worse?
Would you say like the regime that's currently in control in Syria and Libya right now are better than when Gaddafi and Bashar al-Assad were there?
Oh, no. Not whatsoever.
They're worse now,
Right?
right?
They're far worse.
They were killed by Al-Qaeda and other terrorists.
Al-Qaeda and ISIS groups, right?
So
Exactly.
isn't there a concern it could happen also in Iran?
Well, frankly, the current Iranian regime is worse than even before the Ayatollah was killed. That regime was still far worse what Syria has right now, right?
So
It
we
was.
agree with that.
So
how do we
So-
go about changing that?
I smile because I go back to 1980s when I was at Pitt. I actually had a class in Middle East politics, and Dr. Richard Cottam, you can look him up. He was a great man, and he was the professor in Middle East politics class. And this story has a point. He was the last Westerner to leave Tehran in 1979. And as I got to know the man, it became obvious to me, even as a young person, that there's a reason why he was the last person there in Tehran, right, in the embassy. And he told me a story. We were sitting in the student union one day, and he said, he had to call the FBI because he knew Farsi, and there were two gentlemen on the opposite side of all this, plants and stuff in the student union having lunch, and they were talking about him in Farsi. It's the mid-'80s, right? So, lo and behold, Call the FBI. So the point is, my story is, at the end of every Middle East politics class, there was a capstone event, a political war game on how to overthrow the regime. That was the mid-'80s.
Interesting.
And the playbook is still the same.
What's the playbook?
The playbook is you have the people, the population, the Iranian population, overthrow the regime. That's the only way, really, truly. Without boots on the ground, without a full-fledged, full-scale invasion, which will be, there's still no guarantee on the results of that.
Are they scared to go out there after so many have been killed?
Of course they are.
Their homes are being bombed?
Of course. Well, are their homes being bombed?
Are they?
Not by us, not apparently. That's the beauty going back to the performance of our sons and daughters and nephews and nieces overseas right now. The precise precision targeting without incurring civilian population. Whereas Iran's doing what? Firing drones and missiles into cities in Bahrain.
So you're saying...
So, if I can, so the one way to have the regime overthrown is, let's face it, we were close to the potential of an overthrow of the regime before the Iranians, during the protests, which incurred the fact that the Iranian security services killed 32,000 of their own people for a reason, right? The youth of Iran, the intellectuals of Iran, tired of the current regime, right? Now, we need this, the world, the free world, needs to support them, but now you have to, how are you going to support that without a full-on scale invasion or having intelligence assets on the ground, right? Added to the fact that Iran, the regime has shut down pretty much all internet, right? So it's kind of hard to communicate. So there's only certain ways you can communicate with that and support them. The Kurds. So the Kurds have always, the Peshmerga in particular, the Kurds have always wanted their own Kurdistan. They exist in northwestern Iran and northeastern Iraq, southern Turkey, right? I have told friends, if the Kurds move, that's a good sign. That's your first sign. Not only that, but the Shahs of Iran's son in exile here in America, I think it's Reza Pahlavi. He, if you look at his website, I would actually recommend to all your viewers or all your listeners to look at his website. You also get a good indication of what's happening there. He is on his website, sponsored by America, right? Is telling his followers in Iran, patience, wait for the time is nigh, right? So in order to meet that objective, it has to happen internally. One way would be the Peshmerga, which is the paramilitary arm of the Kurds.
How many are there?
I don't know. I think there's probably 15,000. If you look on their website, you look up the news, you can see that they're training right now.
But 15,000 against how many of the...
So that goes back to the next question. Okay, there's the IRGC, which are the zealots of the Iranian military. They have their own Marines, they have their own Navy, they have their own army. They're kind of like, if you a good analogy for them would be, you had Nazi Germany, you had the Wehrmacht, the regular army, and then you had the SS, right? And the SS were the ideological zealots. Well, IRGC is akin to that, right?
Yes.
What are we targeting right now, especially in the Southern Front? We're targeting the IRGC. The Israelis are targeting the IRGC. The Israelis are also targeting these national security services, which would free up and remove some of the threats, mitigate some of the threats against a population who might rise up and revolt. Now, the key is the Artesh. The Artesh is the regular Iranian army. And by the way, I think they're 40 to 50% conscripts, meaning they're drafted. In every revolution, the key is always what? The army, the military, right? If you can win them over, you have a chance. So there's three keys. The Kurds, in my humble opinion, the Kurds, the Peshmerga, meaning the Peshmerga of the Kurds, the citizens themselves, and the Artesh, the army, right? In order to enable them, to mitigate the threats and enable them, obviously they're going to need weapons, resources, money, and frankly, the ability and the objective and the motivation and the courage to do it.
Okay, so I'd like to kind of end. I have some questions from the locals who live in Lancaster.
Sure.
Who wrote in some questions for me. So Bill Goularte, I hope I pronounced your name right, from Manor Township asks, what would be the best possible outcome for the United States, and what would be the worst possible outcome? And then his second question he has is it a realistic possibility to maintain stability in that region after all is said and done?
Let's go to the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is open source intelligence and meaning the news media and reports tell us that there are terrorist cells here in America right now. Worst case scenario is a lot of lone wolf attacks and, or God forbid, a no kidding organized attack, 9/11 style. That's when it happens. Then the 82nd is on board of planes. Then we're moving, right? The American people would demand it. You kill Americans here on our soil, then we will end up with boots on the ground, potentially. That's the worst case scenario, right? The other worst case scenario is, alternatively, we miss some nuclear possibilities. Hezbollah or Hamas or ISIS now has a nuke, given unto Iran. Highly unlikely. Those are the two worst case scenarios. Best case scenario, regime change. Regime change internally, that brings what the gentleman was talking about, stability in the region. Don't forget that since 2009, the Saudis and the Qataris and the Emiratis have been asking America for a nuclear deterrent. They have been asking, they saw us disappear from the region. They saw us aiding and abetting the Iranian regime with billions of dollars. They live with the threat, just much like Israel, right? They're Sunni, except for Qatar, and Iran's Shia.
That's right.
That war has been going on since what, 600s, right? So, considering all that, the Saudis and the regional, the strong actors in the region have been asking America for a nuclear deterrent, to allow them to purchase nuclear weapons as a deterrent to Iran. So there has not been stability in that region, in the Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf, since 1979. The way you bring about stability in a region and the free flow of oil and LNG, natural gas, liquid natural gas, to empower even China's economy, to empower European economy, and to empower Asia's economy, is a regime change and the free flow of trade. I am adamant that Mr. Trump says, and he knows, war is bad for business. War is bad for business.
How much of this war has to do with oil? Some people think it's the reason we're at war is for oil.
Not in America.
Control.
We only get 20% of our oil from that. We can survive just fine. In fact, you know what? If the Strait of Hormuz is closed permanently, there's a lot of people in America get real rich, right? Drill, baby, drill, right?
Yeah.
So that's not a use case of like, well, Americans are afraid because of saying that, well, we just need the oil. No, we don't. No, not anymore. No, we do not. China needs oil. Who is China's that mass economy, right? Who, by the way, they won't come to the trade table. Well, which two countries? Who were China's number one and number two sources of oil? Venezuela and Iran. Oopsie. Geopolitics for business.
Do you think that's one of the reasons why Trump went into Venezuela?
I think Mr. Trump, and if you put aside the things he says, if you put aside just the heart of the man, the heart of the man, he really believes in democracy, and he really believes in goodness, and he is trying to remove threats to our children and his children.
Have you met President Trump? You really hesitated on that one. Was there a reason you hesitated?
So Mr. Trump really, he really believes in removal of the threats to American citizens. I have often told people that even back in 2016, if you kill an American on this planet, whether or not that American loves Trump or hates him, your time on this planet is numbered. Numbered.
You know people who have met him and interacted with him, correct?
Oh, yeah. And I worked at the Pentagon under Trump. Yeah. So, yeah.
But you haven't met him personally yet?
Not on a personal basis, no.
But you've heard a lot about people who
Oh,
do
absolutely.
him,
Absolutely.
and they're very positive.
Absolutely.
And that's why
Well,
you say what
he's a
you
polarizing character. I mean, so I have friends who, this is a funny story, a true story. Let's lighten up a little bit about New Yorkers, right? No offense to any New Yorkers out there, right? I have many NYPD friends who were Navy reservists, especially after 9/11. I mean, NYPD and the New York Fire Department, they just came rushing to serve, right? I even had the assistant district attorney in Manhattan enlist as an E5. And we were telling him, you understand that when you get deployed as an E5, that East Village, down in the East Side condo or apartment is gone. Didn't care. The assistant DA Manhattan enlisted, right? So my point is, but those same people, my NYPD friends, they say, you walk up to a guy, a police officer in New York, and say, "Excuse me, officer, what time it is? What time is it?" You know what they say? He'll say, "What, you don't own an effing watch?" Right? Do you see the point? It's just New Yorkers. And Mr. Trump is, above all, a pure New Yorker, right?
Interesting point. All right, let's move on. Frank Fico of Lancaster asked, when do you think the war will end? What is a realistic time frame?
All military operations all must have an objective, a clear objective with clear rules of engagement, with clear no-kidding plans, right? Otherwise, it turns into, what's that favorite word of American military operations? Quagmire.
I was going to say quagmire.
Exactly. So when does it end? When we meet our objectives. We have military objectives, we have geopolitical objectives, we have economic objectives, straight arm moves, and we have political objectives. In Washington, which one wins? Short term, the military objectives do. Then come the congressional hearings. Then comes the media. Then comes the political pressure. And then comes the economic pressure. So, honestly, that is completely up to the national authorities, right? That's completely up to national authorities. What are the objectives? They need to be stated clearly to the American people once those objectives are met. Now, I will tell you, I am full in favor of watering down those objectives if we know, intelligence-wise, there's the potential for regime change. Then, man, you just keep this on. You keep going. Because the benefits of a regime change of a stabilized Iran and a stabilized Persian Gulf region are enormous. Enormous. We all in this room will benefit from it.
How do we benefit?
Economically. Freedom, right? Can you imagine if we don't have to spend billions of dollars patrolling the Straits of Hormuz like we have been for 47 years, whatever it is?
49.
Yeah. Can you imagine if that threat is removed? Can you imagine how the economy is? Even the economy of China will boom, and maybe they'll come to the table. Oil.
I mean, aren't we still going through Hormuz now?
Well, at the moment we're not, right?
Yeah, but before we were.
Well, so Iran is one of the top 5 producers of liquid natural gas. Mm-hmm. They weren't spending the money on their LNG, on their economy. They were spending money on buying weapons.
And the proxies.
Imagine Israel imagine getting on the news every single week and seeing another Israeli attack on Israel. Imagine that. Imagine the ability of our children to be able to live in peace. Now that's a
stability. Which is one of the questions, the stability in the region. You just answered it again.
Right.
All right. Robert Beltran of Lancaster asks, would you send your children to fight in this war?
He's asking a man who served for 31 years.
I know. I realize that.
Yes. Now, for medical reasons, my kids can't. But would they? Yes. Right. And also keep in mind, I would like, again, I'll say it again, I'll reiterate on the focus. My focus is support the men and women in uniform who are doing this every day. Every 3 days, they're allowed to use their phones.
It's true.
Do you want them to see America over here saying, why are we there and not supportive of them? By the way, you think they're having fun? They're miserable. The USS Ford aircraft carrier had a fire. They've been at sea far longer than a typical deployment. I was on board an aircraft carrier. I had 2 deployments for 6 months. And I was so misfortunate. I had all the kind of ports and all over Europe, right? Poor me, right? We had a lot. The deployment was long. It was being away from family, but we still got the port. We still got to let loose. We still got to relax and get off the boat, right? The Ford, not so much. And then they had a fire, okay? Their morale was low. Everyone's morale was low. In the Navy, we always say one thing. A complaining sailor, although we use a different word, is a happy sailor, right? Because it's not fun, right? But I'll do it again in a heartbeat. I know men and women I work with every day. You just put us on there. We'll go. Now the truth is that the second I land on the aircraft carrier, you're going to take over for those sailors and officers. I'm going, what did I just do? This stinks. This is no fun.
Is it a rumor? Is it not true that the soldiers were dissatisfied and they clogged up the toilets and?
Who knows? And if they did, that's a disciplinary issue on board the aircraft carrier. The commanding officer will take care of that. That's not atypical. That's typical, right? Of being unhappy. First off, be careful who your source is, right? So there's hybrid warfare out there. Don't do the work of the enemy. To the American people, do not do the work of the enemy, because the enemy right now is their only alternative is for this population to say stop it right now. That's their only possible alternative for regime change. This regime is depending upon the politics of America to change. That's their only hope. Don't let them. Don't do the work of the enemy.
But you mean it's so polarized right now?
Right. And by the way, there's foreign intelligence services whose job it is right now to tell you lies. Read my paper about Russian hybrid warfare, right? For instance, there was an exercise in, I think it was either Estonia or Lithuania, that was ended because the Russian social media and hybrid warfare was so good and so effective that mainstream media outlets were announcing that a tank ran over a little kid during an exercise. Never happened. But an entire NATO exercise came to a screeching halt. Why? Because the media reported that lie.
The mass media reported
reported the lie.
People believed it.
Right. What drives me crazy as an information warfare officer is I watch Channel 8 News or I watch the local news and say, what's trending? Why is that news? Just because everyone is reading something, does that make it news? What kind of journalism is that? Right? Letting the public announce for you, right? Just like, that's kind of offensive. That should offend all of our sensitivity. So as far as what's what I'm looking for, intelligence. That offends my intelligence, right?
So how do we tell who's reporting correctly and who's not? How can we differentiate?
That's a podcast. That's another podcast. Okay. Right?
All right. Maybe we'll have you back for that one. All right. So here is.
Did I answer that question, by the way? I apologize for the gentleman had.
I believe you did.
Okay.
You said that you would definitely send your children if they could go. Ed of Manor Township asks, please explain why President Trump threatened Senator Mark Kelly for his remarks that a serviceman must refuse illegal orders. I've got a mixture of Democrats and Republicans in here, as you can see.
I don't know. Frankly, I don't care. But that's just politics of opposition. Don't do the work of the enemy, right? So we can all sit here and we can go through on a daily basis filtering out and analyzing every single word that comes out of that man's mouth. That's Trump. Don't. So why? But maybe we can. First Amendment rights, right? Likewise, we could have done the same thing during Obama's years. And I found some people doing the same thing during the Obama's administration. Let's be honest, right? A politician talks all day long, constantly. Some of them like him, some of them don't. I ran in campaigns. I've slipped up already, right? Simply because I'm human. I'm talking and talking. I slipped up during this interview, right? So the expectation that everybody say everything perfect every time you talk and you're talking for 14 hours a day, that's unreasonable, right? So as far as who said what about, it is an officer's legal right, a military officer's legal right to not abide by a lawful order. But that's where you got to get real careful. What constitutes an unlawful order? An unlawful order might be getting out of foxhole, there's incoming, and your life's going to be put in jeopardy. Well, that's not a lawful order. Yes, it is. You don't like it. You don't want to do it because it constitutes a risk to your life, right? There was a fire on the USS Ford. Damage control team, move. Fire control team, move. They're wearing oxygen breathing apparatuses. That was hell on earth for those men and women. Once again, the performance of your sons and daughters. That was hell on earth inside of a metal chamber, no windows, no ventilation, way below decks, fire, heat, and they obeyed those lawful orders to do that.
Unlawful orders.
At risk. No, they obeyed those lawful orders, right?
What if it's an unlawful
So what?
order?
But then the question is, what constitutes an unlawful order?
What does?
That is a JAG question, Judge Advocate General question, right? And
Yeah,
an unlawful order is one that breaks the law, Title 10 laws, right? Or the Constitution, potentially the Constitution as well.
So if they go against the Constitution and they refuse to go against
So let me tell you, had I disobeyed any orders given to me, and when I was a commander, a lieutenant,
If they
or
were
even a petty
illegal.
officer, had I disobeyed those orders, my JAG would have had to defend and say in court, at a court martial, that I was disobeying. I was given an unlawful order.
What if you were given an unlawful order? What would you
But
do?
again, that's an entirely subjective nature in the heat of the moment. So no, officers should not obey an unlawful order, but you have to understand, as a leader and a commissioned officer, what constitutes an unlawful order. Now, committing murder, that's an unlawful order. Stealing something, that's an unlawful order.
Do you think Senator Mark Kelly should have been threatened for saying that?
I don't even know what he said, so I don't think I'm qualified to answer that.
That's what he said.
What'd he say?
I'll repeat what he said. Senator Mark Kelly, for his remarks that a serviceman must refuse illegal orders.
He doesn't have to refuse illegal orders.
Well,
That's a subjective.
I don't know if it's have, but he should be able to.
We're getting to the point of quibbling here, right? What is a lawful order and what wasn't? That was a generic
It's too
throw
general.
meat to the opposition to statement. So shame on Mr. Kelly, honestly.
Political?
Beyond it. There's nothing happening in this war which is unlawful as far as the orders given out. By the way, most of it's being done by officers, right? This war is being conducted in an electronic and intelligent warfare manner. Most of so I don't want to defend the enlisted because I'm prior enlisted, but the pilots of the F-35s, the F-18s are officers, right? The commanders, the ship's weapons officers on board the frigates and on board the bombers and on board the cruisers that push the button to fire the missile are officers.
I wonder if they know. I mean, they do know, of course, that the majority of Americans are against the war. I wonder how that affects them.
I see different polls, Kat. I do. I don't think the American people are against the war. The American people are against boots on the ground.
That's for sure.
Right? And by the way, do you really want them to see that? I don't want them to see that.
That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah. Again, let's go back to the real issue here, and that is not politics or our feelings. Our feelings should be surrounded on the faith and the incredible performance of our servicemen and women right now, every day, every night, lack of sleep, incredibly dangerous operations.
It's a good point.
Their performance is remarkable, absolutely remarkable.
I can tell you feel very passionate about that.
I've been there. I've been there, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
you've experienced it.
Yeah, I've watched our best and brightest. I personally think, and having been in Iraq and Afghanistan, that generation that volunteered for OAF and OIF, much like our grandparents were the greatest generation, so were they. So were they. And now we're all nearing middle age. So,
And you believe that there's a threat to the United States as well. We'll argue, but I get what you're saying, that we don't have to revisit
well, there's a
that.
threat to the United States. You can tell right
Yeah.
now. How's our gas prices doing? Right?
Yeah, but-
That's an economic threat, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
They're waging like an economic war, right? Iran, that's what
They've always done that.
Understand.
They've held this straight as a token for the bullying, right? As a part of their negotiation practice.
and it's such a horrible, horrific regime.
It is. So why? That goes back to my statement. Don't help them.
It's almost like a threat to humanity.
It has been. It always has been. Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS.
What do we stand for?
What do we stand for? So me, I go to the gas pump. I feel the pain, but then I look at, okay, I'm willing to absorb that. If there's if there's stability in the world, and the inflation comes down, and because gas prices will come down globally, because there'll be a big global economic transition. The Strait of Hormuz actually is that key of a choke point.
And if there's bombs all around us and we're getting killed for protesting, would we want someone to help us?
Absolutely. The fact that, some
Say it.
some administrations were highly negligent in not helping the Iranian population. Highly negligent.
They didn't feel their pain.
They didn't care.
All right,
If they
fine.
cared, let's talk about the abandoning of Afghanistan, right? So who
Oh, the Taliban.
do you think benefited from leaving all that equipment behind?
The Taliban.
And Iran,
Iran.
of course. Iran was all over Afghanistan. Iran runs part of Taliban. Absolutely.
And that was kind
It's a
of
neighboring
recently
state.
that-
All they have to do is drive it across the border.
And that was kind of recently that we left. In fact, someone in my neighborhood lost their son in the attack on our soldiers in Afghanistan.
Yep. So, I
Lost
mean,
their life.
your tax dollars paid for that equipment, and now that equipment could be turned on our sons and daughters. Now let's talk about feelings about that.
And look at the condition in Afghanistan. And as a woman, they're not even allowed to go to school.
That's right.
They've really turned back the clock there.
That's right. But then again, that goes back to the quagmire issue, right? It was a
Yeah.
long-term, long war, and that's why the American population should have a knee-jerk reaction against boots on the ground. We've lived it. And frankly, keep in mind that there are so many veterans out there who served in OIF and OEF and would do it again. But the last person who wants to go to war, Kat, is the warfighter.
Well, Dan, you were wondering why or what lessons did we learn from the Iraqi war and Afghanistan war?
So the lessons are typically, the lessons learned objectively are typically developed into new policies for the Department of War, like real lessons, real military lessons. But then there's the political lessons, right? And one of the lessons we learned, obviously, is to avoid the quagmire. And also, another lesson we've learned throughout multiple wars, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, is the opposition always waits for the American public to turn on the war.
But don't you think they were right in turning on the Vietnam War?
I don't know. That's a whole different story. So that was before I was born, really.
Because, well, you just said, though.
I'm just saying, I'm telling you what the opposition does. That's an objective fact. The objective fact is the opposition always waits for the American public to turn on the war. We're a democracy. We're a good people. War is antithetical to our nature.
Okay. So the last question is from Kevin Reithart, and he asks, is the U.S.-Israel joint venture working to everyone's benefit?
So Israel, in this war, in his current operations, Israel and America have a symbiotic relationship, meaning we both benefit from what each side is doing. It's obvious that the Israeli intelligence is extremely sophisticated. I mean, all you have to do is go back to the remarkable intelligence they must have had to put phones in the hands of Hamas leaders and have them explode. I mean, the layers of sophistication is just remarkable. Likewise, well, frankly, a lot of the Israeli equipment has been modified by them, but that's mostly American. And the Americans we are vastly benefiting from Israeli intelligence. They're known in the region, they can infiltrate, and they have greater on-the-ground capabilities than we'll ever have for intelligence.
Do you think they're on the same page? Because recently I read that Israel's bombing of CARS, the island.
Yeah. Made Trump mad?
Yeah, made him mad. And then I read another article where it said that he actually approved it. So what do we believe?
I don't know. It depends what your source is, number one. Number two, are allies always in agreement? Absolutely not. Let's go back to World War II. Britain and America, we were never always in agreement. It took a diplomatic commander-in-chief, Eisenhower, to manipulate all those political minefields between the two countries. And we were blood allies, and we still didn't get along on everything.
Well, there's a saying, it only takes two people to create politics.
That's true. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. You're okay, Danielle?
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much for your input on this situation in Iran.
It's my pleasure. And just last statement is to support the men and women who are out there doing this right now. Do not do the work of the enemy.
I think you put us in the frame of what they're going through and their long stays in the boat, in the aircraft carriers.
And the USS Ford's headed to Crete, and I hope they have some downtime, and I hope and pray that they're home soon.
As we do. All right. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.